Hey, Nick, Matt Goldsby's still having trouble getting in. He says his email was not specified by the host.
Let me go back to this then. And then that should have worked, but I can try this one more time. See if this creates. Okay. Matthew.Goldsby.
Yeah, MATTHEW.
Yep.
Yeah, I got your email. The link is saying that the email address is not recognized.
All right, try check your email again. There should be another email, and if that works, let me know. If not, we can try something else.
Okay, you got it.
So again, this is the RUSA RUPD Town Hall. Thank you for coming. We're going to wait a few more minutes for folks to hop on while we wait. So if you just want to, get acquainted with the WebEx format, in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a Q&A function. If you have any questions about the presentation, you can ask in that box, and we'll try to get back to it. But we're going to have an open mic session as well if you want to save your questions for that portion. So we're going to wait a few more minutes for folks to hop on, and then we'll get started. Chief Cop, let me know if you need help with the link for the lieutenant. If that's not working out, we can try something else.
I sent him the link that I used to get on that had the password automatically saved.
Yeah.
It seemed to have worked. So.
Okay. Sounds great. Let's see if he's on. And if that doesn't work, then we could always send them the attendee link, and we can just bump them up to panelist in real time. So either way works. Oh, okay. So I'm seeing him in the. Let's try this. Lieutenant Goldsby, are you in the? You're in the panelist section now. Can you hear us? And can you respond with your mic?
Yep, I got you now, Nick.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Lieutenant. So I think looks like the gang's all here. We have the folks from RUSA. We have the folks from RUPD. We'll give it one more minute for folks to hop on, because I know some folks are getting on with the link, and then we'll get started. So again, if you're joining the call now, welcome. This is the RUSA RUPD Town Hall. If you're an attendee throughout the presentation, you can ask questions in the Q&A box, which is on the bottom portion of your screen, as well as having an open mic section with the panelists themselves. So either way, we encourage you to take part, and we're looking forward to conversations happening tonight. Okay, the time is 7:37. We have a pretty active chat, so we're going to get started with our actual presentation by the folks with RUPD. So if you don't mind, guys, we're going to do some introductions. You can just say, like, you know, who you are, who you're with, anything else that's relevant, and we'll just go down that way. And then we can go into the presentation, and then folks were to go into a moderated Q&A portion, which was questions compiled by our wonderful essay chair, China Youngblood, from students. And then we'll have at least half an hour for open questions from the floor, and folks can raise their hand as an attendee. And then myself, Ari, or China will call on you guys, unmute your mic, and then you can ask questions to the panelists directly. So we're going to get started with introductions. So Chief Kopp, if you want to start with your team, and then we can go to the RUSA folks. We'll just do it that way.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. Ken Kopp, Chief of University Police, Executive Director of Public Safety.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Ryan, I'm the Deputy Chief of University Police.
Matt Goldsby, RUPD, Lieutenant, Patrol Operations and Special Events.
Brian Myers, Sergeant, Community Policing Unit.
And Melissa Marrero, Director of Public Relations, Marketing and Communications.
Thank you. And we're happy to have you here tonight. And then we'll just go down to the RUSA folks that are on our end of the thing moderating. So, hi, my name is Nicole Bell. I'm honored to be your student body president, and I'm moderating with some other wonderful folks tonight. Ari.
Hi, my name is Ariel Devlin, but my friends call me Ari. I'm serving this year as the student body vice president.
John.
Hello, my name is Tiana Youngblood. I am the student affairs chair for RUSA.
Thank you. And last but not least, Coop.
Hello, my name's Cooper. I'm the secretary for RUSA.
Thank you. So if you guys put questions in the chat, John and myself, Ari, and Cooper will be monitoring that to make sure that that's, you know, asked if possible. And then we're going to ask some questions following the presentation and then open it up to the floor to go over the process again. So without further ado, Chief Kopp, if you want to go through with your team this nice slide deck, we're all happy to listen and see what you got.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nick. I just want to start out by saying thanks to RUSA for giving us the opportunity to talk tonight. How I've seen RUSA grow throughout the years. I mean, I was a student at Rutgers, and just to see how far RUSA has come, and the leadership that they have shown, and the public safety initiatives we have worked on together throughout the years are just proof of that. Fond memories of all the leadership team throughout the years, great group. And I look forward to continuing that relationship even during these unique times. So just want to start by talking about COVID. And, you know, we don't have a lot of students on campus, but of course, our presence in the 5th and 6th wards continues. That's just beyond Easton Avenue. We estimate anywhere from 9 to 10,000 students live in that area. And just because of the number of students and the contact back there, it is expected that there's an uptick in COVID related cases. So when these cases get reported, there are contact tracers that will be reaching out. They could be from the university, they could be from Middlesex County. And we just want to emphasize the importance of cooperation with these groups. So if you do get a phone call from the Middlesex Health Department or from the Rutgers Student Health, nobody's in any trouble, okay? It's not about people being in trouble. It's about reducing the spread. So if you do get a call, you'll never be asked for a social security number. The questions they're interested in are where you live, if you have symptoms, if you are quarantining, and who you're staying with. So just a quick message on that, and certainly we stand by the 3 W's: wear face covering, watch your distance, and wash your hands. So in relation to COVID, okay, what are we doing in terms of gathering information? So we have an online reporting system that can take concerns anonymously, okay? So up on the screen, you'll see the link to that form, okay? And what this form is intended is to gather just information on any COVID concerns, whether it's accessing a university facility, seeing something that may be a concern for spread, or any of those type of COVID issues. So this is also on the Rutgers COVID site. There's a link to it. We gather the information and then push out the concerns to the relevant departments. I'm going to take a minute now and just kind of pull the group, and Melissa will be gathering information on this. What are concerns, COVID-related concerns, going into the spring semester? Everybody knows that the president put out a message that the university is working towards some type of return in the spring. We don't know what that is yet. But as students, as student leaders, what is your concern for going into the spring semester? So I think what I'll ask to do is I'm going to move forward with the slides. I'll ask for you to send that through the chat. Melissa will gather that information, and then that'll be information we'll feed back to team leads that work on COVID-related activities. Okay, so feel free throughout the slideshow to send in those concerns.
Chief Cop, just to butt in for one moment, if you're trying to share your screen with the link, I don't think it was showing up on our end. So I don't know if that's the slide deck being unresponsive or just if you hadn't moved the actual slide yet.
Is it still up on the first one?
Yeah, it's showing slide. Do other folks see the other slides, or is it still showing the first slide for you guys?
I'm on the first slide.
Yeah, first slide.
First slide.
Okay. So if you want me to like move slides, you can. I think I'm going to try this, guys. Can you guys see the second slide now?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. So for whatever reason, Chief Cop, I don't know if your slide wasn't working. If you go to the left-hand side and click the up-down arrows, that's what should move it.
I have been doing that. So are you on the third slide now?
Now I am. So contact tracers?
Yes.
Okay. If you just want to give me a heads up, I can move the slides as well, and we can do it that way. Just make it sure that we're on the same slide.
Nick, I'll just give you a next. So we're on slide 4, and we're actually moving to slide 5.
Okay.
In terms of how we're handling COVID and responding to minor incidents of criminal activity, we're allowing community to report criminal activity, minor criminal activity, through an online reporting system as well. You'll see the link for that. It's also, you can go to the RUPD website, and there's a link for the online crime reporting system. And once again, those are for minor crimes, okay? Thefts, vandalism, harassing phone calls, those type of things. That'll just reduce the need for contact in the field. Okay, so we have that up and running. The system is active and it's effective. Going to the next slide. I want to introduce again Lieutenant Matt Goldsby. So we had a significant incident on Delafield Street, and Lieutenant Goldsby is going to take us through that. Matt, you need to unmute.
I was. Thanks for having me. I'm new to the team, and I look forward to working with Rusa and the rest of the team that's here. So we're going to talk a little bit about the incident that took place the early morning hours on Delafield Street, particularly at 32 Delafield. For those of you that aren't aware, there was an event there. There was a party that was monetized. They were collecting money at the door. At some point, there was a group of individuals who showed up and didn't want to pay to get entry into the event. A fight ensued involving those individuals. And as many of you have seen on the video, 4 individuals then showed up in a vehicle and fired at 32 Delafield Street. Out of that, there were 8 victims, 2 deceased, 6 were seriously injured. Prior to that incident, post that incident, we received numerous 911 calls within the communication center of shots fired. We put out an "Are you alert" text. We followed that up by an email that was sent by RUPD. New Brunswick Police Department and the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office are currently investigating that incident, and that incident was targeted. It was not random. So next slide, please. The shooting had no connection to Rutgers or its students. However, our students were on scene immediately following and assisted the medical staff in any way that they could, rendered aid to several of the victims of the shooting. Many of the victims were transported by locally by either Rutgers EMS or by city ambulances. Following the incident, a group of Rutgers police officers, along with student affairs, visited some of the homes on Delafield to check on the students and just follow up and offer services because of the incident that took place. And we provide, I'm sure everybody can see it up on the slide deck, students who are in need of any type of support, they're encouraged to contact the Dean of Students' office. Post the incident, we've increased patrols in the area, try to have a higher presence immediately following, and we'll remain out there for a period of time over the next, like I said, next several days we'll be in the area. Next. Some of the tips that we offer is limit gatherings to those folks that you know. In our current COVID world, limit capacities to account for social distancing. One of the concerns is not to monetize events. Be aware of social media. Social media is a great tool, but when you post an event on social media, it gets shared repeatedly, and you may not have control over the number of people or who shows up at your event. If there's any type of a dispute or a problem, contact the police immediately and make sure that you're aware of the surroundings. And again, contact the police department if there's any type of a dispute or any type of a problem at the event. Thanks, Nick.
Chief Copy, I'd like to mute your mic if you're speaking.
Okay, just want to talk about some of the accomplishments from 2019, 2020. Nick, you can go next. One of the things we do is we upgraded our emergency notification system. Okay, the system that we had was an in-house system, was built in-house, needed to be replaced. All right, so we went with a system that's used at a lot of universities across the country called RAVE. It's enhanced in a lot of ways. I don't really want to go into the details, but the text messages go out. They're supported with an email feature as well, and they're also integrated with social media. This is an important means of pushing out information. And we just ask that you manage your text subscription at ens.rutgers.edu. Ensure your number's in there correctly, and just make sure everything lines up. In terms of training, we've been really ahead of the curve. A lot of the training we've been doing for years is now just coming out as mandatory for police. But some of the things we've been doing the last couple of years, some of the training we've taken part in, one is called ICAT, Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics. This is a way of use of force and de-escalation training. It's scenario-based training, and what it's designed to do is to not escalate when there is not a need to escalate, using multiple officers, okay? If it's a scene where someone wants to create self-harm, we have an officer really engage in conversation, and then one officer will engage and the other officer will just monitor the movement of the person in need. Okay, so that's just one of the ways that we train. Cultural sensitivity and awareness, just really giving our staff the tools to operate in a diverse environment. Critical incident response and crisis intervention training, okay, really lines up with how we deal with those in need of mental health assistance. Okay, you see a lot of the calls that turn to that become scenes that involve escalation sometimes start with a call for mental health or assistance. Okay, so we want to train our officers to recognize that and how to deal with that. One of the things we're really proud of is our continued success in working not just within Rutgers with the community, like working with RUSA, but what we do on the outskirts of the community, how we work with New Brunswick. And here to talk about that is our leader and sergeant of community policing, and that's Bryant Myers. Okay, Sergeant Bryant Myers. He's going to talk real quick about how our community policing operates and is effective. You can go to the next slide.
You can go to the next slide. Okay. Thank you for having me. I would like to first start off by talking about the Good Neighbor Welcome program. It's a program where we go out to the 5th and 6th wards and try to make contact with some of the 9,000 to 10,000 students that the chief had spoke about earlier, partnering with Student Affairs to do a community walkthrough to talk to people about ways to stay safe. While we're out there, we leave pamphlets. We usually do it door to door. We knock and try to meet and interact with the residents. But this year, we put together some packages. We laid them on the porches and stoops of some of the residents to influence them to come over to 39 Union Street to obtain a packet that has more in-depth information about city and university contacts so that they could utilize that as a good resource. The off-campus housing office also gives out free window, door alarms, motion spotlight sensors, hand sanitizers, and some other things. We also work with the Rutgers Food Pantry to help stock the pantry for folks who are food unaware. There's also a mobile pantry delivery system that's set up for Bush, Livingston, and Douglas campuses for Thursday only. At the Graduate Student Lounge on College Avenue, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, if you would register ahead, you could set up to pick up a package of food and take it to wherever you need to have it. We do have some upcoming videos for students to help them prepare for different things, how to winterize your vehicle, where you check the oil levels, your tire pressure, and the general vehicle functionality of your car to make sure you're safe during the winter months. We also offer a self-defense training class. One is entitled Self-Defense Training, and the other is RAD, abbreviation for Rape Aggression Defense, where you're taught some kicks and punches and how to break free from holds and things along those lines. You won't be a karate expert in the end, but you would come out with some techniques to help you along the way. We're going to be putting on a virtual safety active shooter training that would help educate us on what to do during an active shooter incident. Some other ways we engage with the community is through a child seat inspection station program, where folks from all over can come to our permanent station on Bush campus. I think it's the only permanent station in Middlesex County, 3 days a week. On Thursdays and Saturdays at different times on Bush campus. There's a Project Medicine Drop, which is a DEA-sponsored nationwide initiative. And Rutgers has a station where you could just drop or bring expired or unwanted medication just to keep it out of reach of folks so that you don't have to worry about those things. In Newark, primarily, the RUPD partners with the off-campus housing as well to put together packages for students that belong to the university, but they go a step beyond and go into the community and visit students that are at home during school breaks and put together a nice little cozy, nice laid out package of various different kind of food components and just give it to students in the area from the local schools in Newark. We take part in the David Touch Foundation. It's a holiday toy drive. It was created in memory of a Rutgers employee's son who passed away from a pediatric cancer at the age of 8. So we help distribute those toys primarily in New Brunswick at our local hospitals, but they go far beyond New Brunswick into Newark and Patterson and other areas. But it's a very large project that we take part in helping regularly for that. And the last thing that we want to emphasize is the Thanksgiving dinner giveaway. It's a joint effort between the New Brunswick Recreation Department, and we go out, deliver, and help prepare the food for senior citizens. We take them to homeless shelters and any other pedestrian that may be out there that is showing signs of, being food insecure. And all these things that I mentioned are regularly advertised on our social media pages. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Next, we're gonna talk about how do we, as a police department, police ourselves, and what are our quality control mechanisms. So Deputy Chief Ryan's here to talk about, he takes a lead role with the Professional Standards Division, and he's going to talk a little bit about what they do, how we're transparent as a police department, and the functions he oversees to keep our levels of high quality. So he's going to talk about that right now.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for the invitation to come and speak with you tonight. As a two-time Rutgers grad, I always enjoy coming to RUSA and interacting with you all. On the slide, you'll see a couple of bullets. The first is accreditation. So police accreditation is one of those things which is unfortunately sometimes misunderstood. Unlike healthcare or corrections, police accreditation is pretty involved, and a lot of police agencies are not accredited. In New Jersey, there's only 13 police agencies which are accredited through what's referred to as CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. In addition to that, the Rutgers PD is accredited by IACLEA, which is the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators, and the New Jersey State Chiefs of Police. The reason we have 3 different accreditations is because each one deals with a unique set of standards. CALEA is a national program. New Jersey State Chiefs is a local to New Jersey program. and IACLE is a university-wide program, but by and large, we comply voluntarily with over 800 standards regarding the way in which the department operates, everything from the way we check our vehicles to the way we debrief arrestees and the manners by which we train. We could spend a whole night talking about just accreditation, but I think it's important for you to all understand that the overarching goal is with accreditation is transparency and community involvement. We're going to talk a little later in the presentation about an annual survey we do. That's a function of accreditation. We're constantly looking to know how we're doing. That leads into internal affairs, which is our quality control mechanism for the agency. That's where we accept complaints, both internally driven and externally from the public. And we accept all complaints from individuals who want to be anonymous to individuals who want to come in and state their name and sign their name on the form. We take complaints via email, via phone, via the websites. We accept complaints regardless of the day or night or the day of the week. We take complaints from people who are under arrest or maybe individuals who are intoxicated. Those complaints are investigated. They're assigned to a trained investigator in our internal affairs bureau or to a line supervisor, depending on the scope and magnitude of the complaint. Individual employees, I should say, are notified and they're investigated and consistent with a process. And annually, we publish our statistics regarding the number of investigations we do, what the outcome is, in other words, how many we sustain, how many we were unable to sustain, what level of discipline are meted out. Again, that's the internal affairs process. The early warning system, so the chief mentioned, we were one of the first agencies in the state to have a robust early warning system. And what that is it's a way to monitor our employees. We keep track on everything they do to make sure that individuals who are not living up to department and university expectations are provided with the appropriate remediation, that they're counseled regarding our expectations, and we can develop a comprehensive plan to ensure that the work that they're providing is consistent with the high level that you expect from us. The next bullet up is body cameras. So since early 2016, the Rutgers Police Department has had body cameras on every uniformed police officer. So every citizen community interaction with our officers is captured on body camera. Those body cameras have been invaluable in both assisting the community in understanding why officers do what they do, as well as assisting the department in training our officers, allowing them to reflect on their actions and learn from those interactions. In addition, we're in the process of upgrading our body cameras to a newer technology just to remain current with technology trends. As I said, we've been using these cameras since 2016. It's in many ways like a cell phone, right? So over time, it requires refreshing. But know that all of our interactions are recorded and reviewed. Last is Eat Can't Wait. So many of you may have heard of the Eat Can't Wait campaign. It grew national attention in recent months due to some tragedies throughout the country. And what Eat Can't Wait really is 8 steps which are publicly believed to reduce the use of force by police officers. Truth be told, it has reduced use of force by almost 72% in those agencies that implement an Eat Can't Wait program. But the RUPD has been following the tenets of Eat Can't Wait for the better part of 2 decades. For those of you who aren't familiar, Eat Can't Wait is a ban on chokeholds and strangleholds. Those are prohibited by RUPD policy unless use of force is indicated to the point where deadly force will be justified. In other words, the officer is only permitted to use a chokehold or strangulation hold if they're doing so to protect their own life. Required de-escalation training, as Chief Cobb mentioned, through ICAT and a number of other trainings. We train regularly on de-escalation. Require warnings before shooting. All of our officers are trained that when feasible, they identify themselves, indicate who they are, and obviously attempt to de-escalate the situation. We exhaust all alternatives before shooting. As the chief mentioned, we attempt to de-escalate. We bring additional officers to the scene, whatever can be done to create space and distance. A duty to intervene, what does that mean? If an officer observes a fellow employee, a coworker, exceeding his or her authority, they have an ethical and moral and legal obligation to intervene, both to stop the excessive extension of authority and to notify a supervisor. We ban the shooting at motor vehicles unless necessary to stop imminent danger. In other words, if the vehicle is approaching the officer and or a member of the community, the officer needs to balance that. Otherwise, the shooting in a motor vehicle is prohibited. We require the use of force continuum. That requires officers to evaluate the totality of the circumstances and use the appropriate level of force accordingly. And we require comprehensive reporting on all use of force. All of our use of force is completed, by the officer using force on a form which includes diagrams and a number of other reporting mechanisms. It's reviewed first by a supervisor or field level supervisor, then by a commander, typically a captain, completes an administrative review, and then by an internal affairs detective who will review that incident, looking for trends in accordance with the body camera video, other video from the scene, to both for training purposes as well as to ensure that the force was legal, justified, and within policy.
Thanks. Thanks, Deputy Chief Ryan. Okay, we're going to look ahead. A lot for us to work on coming ahead. One of the focuses is going to be some diversity, equity, and inclusion and how this spills into our recruitment activities. We're looking to maintain and enhance our diverse applicant pool. We're currently in a hiring process now. We had some 900 plus applicants, and last year one of the things we spoke to RUSA about was having some standing seats on that community-oriented review board where we have students come in and actually have a role in determining who our next officers will be with the RUPD. So expect outreach on that in October. Okay, we'll have our corp coming up, and RUSA will have standing seats on that board. Okay. The other thing we want to do is blend in DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, into our mission statement. Okay, our mission statement needs to be reassessed and looked at. And really, who's going to drive on that? Melissa Marrero. She'll be coordinating with RUSA to come together, get some representatives, and work with us and other community members to provide input for a new mission statement. Okay, kind of mission statement is where it all starts, and we want to be able to point our personnel in the right direction. So we're looking to revamp that. Some other things we're working on: a public safety community advisory group will be made up of representation from RUSA, other organizations within the university. I'll be part of that. Deputy Chief Ryan and Lieutenant Goldsby will be part of that as well. We'll be bringing that group together to have some ongoing meetings, so we have these discussions on a regular basis. And as the Deputy Chief mentioned about our accreditations, we have a reaccreditation coming up in 2021, so something that we're preparing for now. We go next. So one of the things we talk about, how do we measure the job that we're doing out there in the field? And the Deputy Chief mentioned that accreditation drives us to conduct a survey every year. We've seen some great responses in our survey. It has increased significantly over the year with the number of participants. So by and large, you get 7,000 responses from a survey at Rutgers. That's pretty good. And what we've seen, overall performance of RUPD, 88%, image, 87%, with a combined approval rating of 88%. It's a 1.4% increase from the previous year. So we're trending well. Next survey will come out in 2021. And this is an open-ended survey. It allows people to not only answer the questions we have put into the survey, but also an open end to provide any insight or critique anyone wants to anyone wants to provide. So, Nick, now's the time that we'll open it up for questions.
All right, well, thank you, Chief Kopp, and all our panelists for speaking on these very important issues. So Ari, myself, and Tiana have compiled a few questions from across the student body past week that we have in a document that we're going to share our photos, and then we're going to open it up to the general body here. So, Vianne asked a question, Tom asked a question, so we'll call on you guys following the moderated questions, and we could open forum discussion. So without further ado, Tiana, do you want to ask your first question?
Sure. My first question is, how do you plan on helping the Rutgers community and Black community at Rutgers to ensure safer campus for everyone?
Okay. One of the things is engaging with the community, okay, which is kind of what we're doing now. But that community advisory group is really going to dig deep on the issues, okay, because I don't think it's the issues that are going on throughout the country. Okay, I can't control that. What I want to do is get the police department and the community in the best place. And part of the engagement is, having a relationship before an event happens. So the first time that we're meeting, it's not as a result of an event or an incident. Okay, it's let's establish, let's sit down, and let's talk. Okay, so that advisory group is going to be very important for that, and it's important that we look to you guys to get some of the key players on that advisory board so the right questions are asked. So certainly in terms of safety, Lieutenant Goldsby brought it up. We're strategizing in the places where we see activity, okay? So expect a enhanced presence of the RUPD in the ward area off campus. That's where the majority of our students are right now. So that's where we're going to be. So that's one of the things we've also enhanced our technology with RAVE, the ability to push out messages. And no, in that off-campus community, we go beyond what other universities do, okay? Most universities don't push out messages to their off-campus community. We do, okay? So we want an informed community. We want a community that feels safe. We want a community that feels comfortable coming to the table and talking to us. Now, there's a lot of work we have to do for that to get there, but I think we have the right mechanisms in place. It's just a matter of turning the switch on and, getting those conversations going. I had a conversation with the deputy chief. He's going to be kind of leading and driving on setting these meetings up with the community. Okay, so expect communication from him for an invitation to a meeting soon. And Nick, it's important that we get the list together of who are the right people to be there. Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Tiana, for asking the question. So, Madam Vice President, a lot of students had questions about the review process, and I think if you want to ask a question about that, that'd be welcome this time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Chief Kopp, again, thank you so much, and everyone else from RUPD for attending this roundtable. Town Hall, I know this is very informative, just as students are aware of what's going on. But just as President LaBelle said, we did get numerous questions about this as well. So there's two parts of it, but I'm going to ask you the first part so you can answer it, and then I'll come back with a follow-up. So the beginning of it is, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of a process where a police officer's behavior is investigated by the internal police force? And what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of a process where a police officer's behavior is investigated by a third-party agency?
Well, I'm gonna turn this over to the deputy chief. He handles our internal affairs, and he'll talk a little bit about what we do and how we're involved with external agencies, with the prosecutor's office. But I'll turn it over to him and let him respond on that.
Thanks, Chief. So, as I understand your question, the RUPD does a tremendous job of policing itself, and I have to tell you that nobody dislikes a cop who's not doing the right thing more than a cop who's doing the right thing, right? So, what that means is our officers in internal affairs, our supervisors on the front lines, I mean, they have almost no tolerance for police officers who violate the rules, violate the Constitution, and don't live up to the expectations of the police department. When we receive a complaint, it first undergoes an initial review to determine whether or not there's any conflict of interest, meaning whether or not the police department itself should not investigate this complaint, and or whether it involves any implications of criminality. If it does, or if either of those two indicators flag, the complaint is immediately referred to either the county prosecutor's office with appropriate jurisdictions, that would be Camden, Essex, or Middlesex, and or the Office of Integrity and Professionalism in the Office of the Attorney General. A lot of times those investigations will be conducted jointly at that level and then referred back to the police department for discipline. But a lot of times the investigations occur within our police department's Internal Affairs Bureau, and they result in some type of discipline and or corrective measures.
Awesome. Just a follow-up and clarification. Out of the two, can you just, which one would you guys be processing this academic year? I know we are, this semester, there's not a lot of students who are on campus, but I know police officers are going to be out. So dependent on any internal investigations going on, out of the two, which ones will you guys be doing and why? Just for clarification for everybody.
Absolutely. So it's a case-by-case information. We could effectively be doing both on the same case. It all depends on what the allegations are within the complaint. As I indicated before, if there's even an appearance of a conflict, in other words, there's something where the supervisor may have also been involved, or there could be some other issue of concern, then obviously it'll be referred to the prosecutor's office. As I indicated, if there's any allegation of some type of crime on the part of the police officer, so it could be an excessive force, it could be some type of theft or something along those lines, those cases are also immediately referred. So we work in tandem with those agencies. Now, as I may not have explained, our internal affairs unit is separate from the patrol bureaus. So internal affairs is staffed with a lieutenant and 2 sergeants, and they're specifically trained in the investigation of complaints. They do that exclusively. They're responsible for that and the vetting of new employees. So once the Corp and the Supervisory Review Board select a candidate, they do the candidate's background investigation. So they're not on the street as well, interacting in that sense. They're focusing exclusively on the investigation of those complaints.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I just want to add to that, we are our strongest critics. And what I mean by that is we self-generate the majority of the complaints through our quality control processes. So, I speak for our organization. We're looking to become a better place through analyzing what we do and making ourselves better. And the majority of the complaints are generated internally to make us a better police department.
Thank you, everyone who answered that question.
Thank you, Ari. So then following along those lines, just, past precedents with different groups, we had a lot of questions from students and minority groups about policing on campus at certain events. So I have likewise a follow-up question, like, 2 parts. So a lot of students have raised concerns about over-policing at cultural and Black events. So could you talk about how RUPD currently determines the number of officers present at these events? And then moving forward, what are the steps you're taking with those communities to ensure that events aren't over-policed?
And we spoke about this briefly. One of the things I want to do is make that a subject for the community advisory group to have an ongoing discussion. But I'm going to turn this one over to Lieutenant Goldsby, who does a lot of the planning and assigns officers to event and works with the groups. So go ahead, Lieutenant Goldsby.
Thanks, Chief. As the Chief mentioned, and I mentioned earlier in our introduction, is what I do is I also work with large groups and special events here at the university. And I don't do that by myself. I work a lot with a lot of the student programming events, a lot of the events that are held long before the event ever takes place. We have a meeting, and then within that meeting, we discuss a lot of the desires of the group, what they're interested in doing, a lot about who they're bringing in as a talent in some cases. And a lot of that, and working with the event organizers and the folks who are hosting the event, a lot of that is what drives the staffing for these events. So we do work hand in hand. Again, we constantly look to reevaluate. We look at ways to not only save money, but we look at ways to make events safer for the Rutgers community and those who are attending the events. So it's a constant evaluation, and we again, every event is looked at individually, and the organizers and the stakeholders are all involved in the decision making and how we go about staffing certain events.
Thank you, Chief Cobb. Anthony Goldsby. That's going to answer the question. I know that a lot of students are happy to work with you to make sure that we know more about these issues moving forward, and I'm happy to work and get you in contact with students that have thoughts and notes to the advisory group as well, and we're looking forward to working with you to address that concern. The final question from the moderators will be from Tiana, and then we'll open it up to the floor if the panel's so kind to stay for the next 10, 20 minutes, have questions from the audience directly. So Tiana, do you want to give the question?
Sure. Just a quick follow-up to that past question. I'm really curious. Whenever there is an event on campus, do they always have to go to you, or is it the organization or the event coordinator's choice? I'm just really curious to know, like, what requires you to step in to have that conversation with them.
Good question. A lot of it is driven by the hosts, the event hosts. So whether it be one of the student centers, recreation, primarily the student centers, I would say, any venue that's controlled by the university, that will normally start the conversation. Those hosts will normally bring all of the interested parties together, and we'll discuss the needs for the event. And that's normally how that happens, is we're brought together normally by the host.
Okay, and last question from me. What is one thing that you want the student body to know, or wish that the student body knew about you guys as RUPD?
I think that we have a lot in common. Just the love of Rutgers. I think if we sat down, and in fact, those conversations were going on, I think, before the panel actually started. Nick was talking to Deputy Chief Ryan. We're like everybody else, and I think there's a lot more in common than people might think. I like to view everybody in a positive light. Even the person we arrest, by and large, they're all good people, just made some bad choices throughout the night. So there is a real human side to police. And I think it's difficult to see from the community, certainly during these times. But it's events like this that can bring us closer. And that's the goal, just to see us from a human side, and for us to see you in that light too, during events like this. So a lot of us have strong Rutgers ties. All of us do. I went to Rutgers. Deputy Chief Ryan went to Rutgers. Melissa went to Rutgers. Lieutenant Goldsby's children went to Rutgers. So it's, everybody has a vested interest here, and we all have similar goals. And that's to have a safe environment, a safe learning environment. And I think we could be even more effective when we work together. That's what I would want people to know. If anybody else from the team wants to chime in, go ahead.
Yeah, I also happened to grow up in the backyard of Rutgers, Livingston campus. I was probably about 2 miles away and probably spent a good portion of my youth on Livingston campus. But yeah, as the chief had mentioned, I currently have 2 daughters who attend school here. I've been here for a little bit over 27 years, going on 28. It's a great environment. I've always loved working with the folks here, both the students as well as the professional staff. And I think, the chief said it best when he said just the understanding that we're pretty much just like each other. Everybody's the same. And if we're all pulling in the same direction, I think there's amazing things that we can accomplish.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your question. And thank you to the panel for your answers. We do recognize that we're all part of the Rutgers community and we have different roles to play, and we're happy to work with students and RUPD to ensure that we're doing justice to both groups. So with that being said, we have a number of students that want to ask you some direct questions. So I'm going to be calling on some folks and then unmuting their mics. So I ask that for those talking, try to keep your questions to a limited frame so we can get to the most folks as possible, but you'll be able to speak and the panels will respond with their voice as well. So with that being said, I believe, I'm going to apologize in advance for the name if I mispronounce it, but Vivian, if you have your questions, I'm going to unmute you, and then you could ask your questions and we'll go from there. So if you give me a moment, do this. Okay, so you should be unmuted at the end.
Hi, so I have a couple of questions. First, I'd like to know, why is it that 40% of all bias incidents that occur in Middlesex, why do they happen at Rutgers? I'm also wondering how diversity and inclusion will solve the issue of policing being an inherently racist and oppressive system. And I'm also wondering, when will the demographics of RUPD arrests will be made public?
Okay, go ahead with your first question again.
Sure.
Is it related to bias?
Yes. So 40% of all bias occur in Middlesex at Rutgers. What's the reason for that? If RUPD is such a groundbreaking and revolutionary, progressive police department, why is it that 40% incidents occur at Rutgers?
Okay, a large part of the bias-related incidents that occur at Rutgers are the result of vandalism that occur inside of bathrooms, graffiti that's written on walls. These are very, very difficult incidents to solve, and these incidents take literally seconds. And it's hate that's spewed in the matter of seconds, and it's difficult to be there. Okay, so certainly we want to solve some of these issues, but it takes working with the community to do that. I don't have an answer for why they occur at Rutgers, other than the fact that the people that do this know it's going to get attention. Okay, there's a bias prevention team where these type of incidents are vetted through, and we work with that team. And there's education that goes out through that team. But we want to catch people that do this just as much as anybody else, only that it's a difficult incident to solve. Okay, and we might get enough evidence to show, okay, we have a person going in there, but we don't have cameras inside the bathrooms or cameras at some of these locations that are very, very isolated, because nothing else occurs there that would drive us to tape these certain areas. Okay, so we want to catch people just as much as anybody else doing this type of activity. Why it happens at Rutgers? It happens at Rutgers because it's a place that will get attention. Okay, and that's what I feel about that issue. If you want to go into the next question.
I think you misunderstood the question. The question basically means that bias acted out by police officers against minorities. So why is it that 40% of all bias incidents where a police officer is a prejudice against someone, why is it that 40% of all those incidents happen at Rutgers? I'll move on to my second question.
No, well, Deputy Chief Ryan, do you have information on what she's referring to?
I do. So I don't know where you're getting that statistic from. The 40% number you're referring to, that I'm familiar with. That was an article from the Daily Targum from about a year ago. In 2019, the University Police Department received only one complaint regarding differential treatment, and that involved a security officer. I don't know that Rutgers police officers are responsible for what you're alleging or attributing to them. I'd be glad to speak with you offline, though, regarding the concern, and maybe we can talk about where the data is coming from.
Okay. So I was also wondering, how does diversity in Rutgers Police Department or Rutgers University Police Department solve the issue of policing being an inherently racist and oppressive system?
Okay, what I control is the Rutgers University Police Department, and I speak for the Rutgers University Police Department. I stand by my officers and team. We are not a racially oppressive police department, and okay, that's disappointing to hear that, because that's not the feedback, and by and large, we get from the community. Okay, I'm very proud of the work that my officers do, and we want to be the best we can be out there, and part of that is being a diverse police department. We're one of the most diverse university police departments in the country, and I'm proud of that. Okay, so I don't agree with that assessment of the Rutgers University Police Department, and the evidence doesn't show that.
Was there a final question that you wanted to ask, Vivian?
Yeah. When will the demographics of RUPD arrests be made public? As of now, the racial makeup of those arrested by RUPD isn't available, so I'm wondering when that's going to be made available to the public.
Mike, you want to go with that?
Sure. So in 2019, the police department arrested 688 individuals for various violations of law or legal process. Of that group, the majority, 272 of those individuals, were white. That amounts to about 40% of the arrests. The remaining breakdown is 74% male and 24% female, but the majority of the individuals that were arrested were white males. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Vivian. If you want to respond to that, don't move to the next person.
40% isn't a majority. Also, we're wondering, 40% isn't a majority, and for the demographics to only be indicative of the white people arrested or the white folk arrested doesn't give us an insight on how RUPD treats Black, specifically Black, and other minorities differently.
No, I understand, Vivian, and I'd be glad to speak with you offline, but of the 688 individuals who were arrested, 40% is the largest group. In other words, the remaining 60% are broken down in various categories, but the 40% represents the largest segment of arrests.
I think we're happy to have Vivian you join us in those future talks with RUPD and the advisory committee and other groups, but other folks have questions tonight, so we're just going to move on and hear their concerns as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
I'm going to put my email in the chat, Vivian. If you want to email me any questions, I'd be glad to speak with you.
Thank you, Vivian, for your questions again, and thank you, Chief, for answering them. The next question is from Tom. So, Tom, I'm going to unmute you, and you can ask your question.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Hey, everyone. So my question's more on the RU alert system, specifically on the Delafield shooting response. So the crime logs put out by you guys for the shooting occurring at 1:19, but the initial RU alert was sent out until just before 2:30. So why was there such a substantial delay in this case? And is that something we can look forward to? And I do know it's active investigation, so you might not be able to say, but.
No, we can talk about that. Certainly, there is the accuracy of information that has to be put out. We want to be accurate in the information we put out. It takes some time for the officers to arrive on the scene, make the scene safe, transport individuals, and relay the information that has to be put out through the communication center. It also takes some time for the information to deliver. Remember, these messages are going out to thousands and thousands of people. Okay, so you put that all together, and it does take some time. Okay, we certainly want to be as efficient as we can be, but we also want to be accurate as well.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the answers to that question. Next, we have Jay. Jay has a question for the panelists. And Jay, I'll mute you if you give me 1 sec.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Hi. So my question was, in what ways does RUPD use their hiring process or any other methods to make sure that officers within the police department don't abuse their authority?
So the hiring process is a very robust process. So there's a series of interviews the person goes through. There's a very extensive background check that the person goes through. There's a psychological evaluation that's done. There's a 6-month of analysis that goes on in the police academy. There's a 3-month field training program. There's a test after the training program, and then there's a final interview with me. We certainly hope along that path that if there are concerns about the person, that they're brought forward. So I think with our hiring process, with the interviews we do with the community, we do with the peer group, the interview that goes on with the police chiefs, we hope all that in totality turns out a good police officer. So we think our hiring process is very robust, and that's essentially how we manage our process and hope that we deliver the best officer to the field.
Okay, and I don't have much time, but how would that differ from like another police department or any other police department?
Well, I think if you saw the way we do our backgrounds, basically leaving no stone unturned, I would put our background up against any background in the country to say that we are very extensive in our background process. I mean, this is everything from going to the high school the person went to, checking on records, to knocking on neighbors' doors, checking everything. I mean, quite
social
frankly,
media, everything in between.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I've seen other background processes out there. I think ours is second to none.
All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for the question, and thank you, Chief Cop, for answering. Next, we have a question from Max Wong, and so I'll meet you, Max, in a moment. Okay, Max, you should be good. we can go back to Max if he's occupied at the moment. We have a question from Nia. So Nia, I can unmute you. You can ask your question.
Hi. So I have 3 questions. First one, how is increasing police presence in any way going to diffuse the situation?
Okay, are you speaking to, I don't know what situation you're referring to.
If the police are called, why do you think increasing police presence is going to make the situation better?
Okay, if you're not talking about any situation specifically, I mean, the response is more often than not dependent upon the type of call that goes out there. So, you know, we like to be measured in our response. You know, so I have difficulty understanding exactly what you're getting to, but we certainly want to be measured in our response, and it's incident specific as to the number of officers that go to a call.
Okay. My second is why you mentioned that you want to exhaust every option before shooting, but why is shooting even on your radar?
Shooting's on our radar because it's incidents like Delafield Street. We had 8 people shot and 2 people killed. By the grace of God, none of our students were killed. This does not diminish the fact that 2 people were killed, but officers responding to that scene need to be armed and need to be ready to take action in the event that deadly force is pointed their way or a student's way. Unfortunately, it's necessary that our officers are armed. We also look at some of the active shooter incidents throughout the country that have occurred. Active shooter incidents are more likely to occur on the grounds of a learning institution. We want to be able to respond and eliminate the threat so lives aren't lost. That's a big reason why we're armed.
Okay, and my last question is, do you drug test your officers on a regular basis?
Yes. At least twice a year.
Okay, thank you.
And during the hiring process, prior to getting hired, and during the police academy, they're tested as well.
Thank you, Nia, for those questions, and thank you, Chief Cop, for the answers. I have a question from a student that was able to use their mic, so I'll read that off briefly. So the student asked, I was wondering if safety enforcement and contact tracing will extend to New Brunswick citizens, in particular, tracing between Rutgers students and NB community members, and how contact tracing is balanced with concerns about privacy.
Okay, the police department doesn't do the contact tracing. That's done through county health, and a lot of times Rutgers Student Health will assist because, quite honestly, with what's going on, some of the county health departments become overwhelmed, and the thought is that Student Health can assist with that. It's, you know, certainly HIPAA applies. This is not information that the health department is going to be publishing and putting names out there or anything like that. It's just important, as I said, to assist with helping to stop the spread. So the intention is to stop the spread. They are obligated to HIPAA law. The police department does not do contact tracing, so I think further information on that would go either to the county, or further questions on that could go to the county health department or to Rutgers Student Health.
Thank you. For the person asking, my sister actually works in contact tracing as like a contact tracer, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to give her your way so she can answer that. We have a question from Miguel. So Miguel, I'll unmute you as well if you want to speak. You should be unmuted.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thanks, Nick. So it was mentioned earlier during the presentation that in cases of conflicts of interest, a case can be deferred to another office. What would the RUPD determine as a conflict of interest, and would an existing friendship or a workplace dynamic fall under the umbrella of a conflict of interest? In other words, wouldn't an independent third party adjudicating cases of police discrimination and dereliction of duty protect better from conflicts of interest as opposed to a case being investigated by people who likely know and have worked with the person being investigated?
Go ahead, Deputy Chief Ryan.
That's a fair question. I don't disagree with your assertion in some level, but the guidelines for police internal affairs investigations prohibit the investigations being contracted out, meaning we couldn't hire a third-party company to investigate them. We have an obligation under the guidelines to investigate them ourselves. And in those cases, and I think the examples you gave are very appropriate, those are often either provided to the county prosecutor's office or at least worked in conjunction with that office to ensure that there is no impropriety by the investigator or the investigation. I mean, we have opportunities throughout the university where individuals have family members or close friends who are in departments and maybe witnesses, that type of thing. And that would be a good example, I think, of an opportunity to involve the county prosecutor's office to ensure that there is no optic of impropriety. As I indicated when I answered that question, I don't think anybody has more of a disdain for a police officer who doesn't follow the rules than a police officer who does follow the rules, right? And that's the point that I'm trying to bring across, that we hold ourselves to a very high level with respect to both accountability as well as transparency. That's why I came tonight with the statistics to provide that information. And I'd be glad to speak offline regarding any of these issues, as well as the chief and the rest of the leadership team that's here with you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Miguel. Thank you, Deputy Ryan. So we'll have a few more questions. We'll be out of here by 9 so that folks can go home and get an express. But there's a question from Adriana. So if you want me to ask Adriana, I can meet you. So if you give me an I can put your mic. Okay. One moment, please. Appreciate the patience. And then Adriana, you should be good to speak.
Hi, I just had a question. So you mentioned the need for coming into the community with firearms because of a potential active shooter situation. If everyone on a certain street in New Brunswick, for example, Plum Street or Amsterdam Street, between some perpendicular avenues, all signed a document asking RUPD to never enter their neighborhood with firearms, would this request be honored?
No.
And why is that?
Because my officers are empowered under the law to carry firearms and need that to protect the community and themselves.
What if the community constituents ask the officers to never enter that neighborhood at all?
So it's difficult to answer the what ifs. I feel like the community in the wards appreciates our presence.
That's an interesting point, because having lived in New Brunswick for several years, that's not exactly what I've received when conducting surveys as part of a larger initiative to defund the New Brunswick Police Department. So again, I ask, would the request be honored if everyone in that neighborhood asked for that request to be honored?
No.
And why is that?
I believe I answered that.
So Chief Cop, Adriana, thank you for the question. If you want to direct Chief Cop offline or speak with us further, we're happy to do so. If there's no further questions that are not the same question, we have other folks who want to ask. questions as well. So if you're able to speak offline or speak with us later, it'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Okay, there was a question from Malachi, so I'm going to go to Malachi and unmute him. All right, Malachi, you should be good.
Okay. Thanks, Nick, so much. Just give me a sec to pull up my question. As we face nationwide calls for justice, it is clear that action needs to be taken in order to create systems of accountability for our officials. Would the RUPD be in favor of an independent authority that would adjudicate cases of misconduct as to create a fairer and a more just system of accountability?
We're in favor of whatever can make us more accountable, but there's certainly a lot that has to go into that because a lot of it's controlled by legislation and law. There's a lot of legislation that's in the works right now, and we're open to anything that makes us more accountable as long as it goes through the proper channels of the legislator to become enacted into law or flows through the Attorney General's office.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Malachi. Thank you, Chief Kopp, for answering the question. I know that Max had a question and he wasn't able to speak last time, so Max, I'm going to unmute you. If you're around, please ask your question. It appears that Max is having some computer difficulties. So at that point, seeing no further questions in the current docket, it's 8:53. We have a meeting to attend to for RUSA. So I'd like to ask the panel, is there any closing remarks you'd like to make before we ask us to part ways?
Just want to thank the group for the time, thank the group for the questions, and we look forward to continue to work for the group, continue to work with the group to build our advisory team, and hope to get some more initiatives going together in the future.
Thank you, Chief Kopp. Thank you for the panel for coming. Thank you, Tiana, Ari, Cooper. Is someone, Sergeant Myers, who's speaking?
No, I was just saying thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we know you can speak this much of the time, Sergeant Myers. We're happy to have you come back and answer questions about community policing another point if you want to have outreach as well. So thank you again for coming. For those that are in RUSA, we have a meeting after this with several bills, so stick around. We're going to hop over to Zoom. But if there's no further questions or comments from the panel, I'd like to thank the panel for spending their time with us. Thank the students for giving their questions that were very relevant and important to answer. And again, we'll be following up with the RUPD and with you to make sure that we have dialogue moving forward this semester and in the coming year. So Chief Kopp, Deputy Ryan, Sergeant Myers, Nichols, Melissa, thank you again for your time. Appreciate it. I'm going to close the call and we'll end at 8:45 or 8:54, my bad. And we'll move on to the RUSA Zoom call, guys. So have a great night.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Good night.